You know, my apologies if you all are waiting on this next video. It took me a while to get through this season due to the fact that there's a lot that happened that I had to pause and go back and restart the episode and take down notes and whatnot. And also due to my own laziness. So, my apologies. Oh, and I'll also forget to pay the Hulu accounts every month. So, I will have to wait until I have some money to restart my subscription to Hulu because the entire series of Smallville is on Hulu. And I wonder why it is not on HBO Max yet, because it's a Warner Brothers production. But I'll find that out later. Now, I used to have the DVDs, the complete series DVD. It came in a nice little package and everything. When I first saw it, the complete series, it was at Target for almost $250. And I was like, nah, I can't get that right now. And then like a year later, I saw it on eBay for $100. So I managed to get that, and it came in a nice little casing and came with newspaper clippings and little booklets behind the scenes and whatnot. And it had the unaired pilot of Aquaman, played by Justin Hartley, that plays Green Arrow in later seasons of Smallville. But it must have got lost during my moves or whatnot, or it could have been sold by my ex and her family. I don't know. That's a whole thing that I'm not going to get into right now. But without further ado, let's hit the theme song and get into Smallville Season 2.
If there's one man who can help, if there's one man who can help, it's the man coming in here right now.
Smallville Season 2 premiered on September 24th, 2002 through May 20th, 2003 with 23 episodes, which is 2 more episodes than Season 1. There's a tie-in web series that was on AOL Broadband titled Chloe Chronicles, to which we follow Chloe Sullivan as she wraps up unfinished business from filler episodes like Jitters, where Earl Jenkins kept Chloe and her friends hostage at LuthorCorp, and he died while getting treatment. Season 2 dives more into the Superman mythology and has a bit more of Clark's origins revealed. We also get special guest stars Christopher Reeves and Terrence Stamp that were in the original Superman movies. The main cast stays the same, minus one, but we'll get to that later. Like the first season, the second season aired on Tuesdays at 8 p.m., which was a good time to air an episode on the Primetime Network. The second season was well received and performed better than the first season. Smallville was filmed in Vancouver, while post-production was done in Los Angeles. The Kent farm was actually a real farm on 846 248 Street, Langley, British Columbia, Canada. I know the real owners were getting money around this time. For over 10 years of the show, they were making bank. I bet the owners retired, but turned around and used it again for Superman and Lois. So they must love the money. But enough of that story. Let's recap from the last season. As the spring formal arrives, a huge storm approaches. Clark's secret is found out by Nixon, one of Lex's associates, and he plans to tell Clark's secret to the world. So Jonathan goes after Nixon, leaving Martha in the storm cellar where the spaceship activated. Whitney leaves to go off to the Marine Corps while asking Clark to look after Lana. As Lana was heading back, she was caught in the storm. Clark goes in after her, going into the second season. As the ship heads towards the storm and short circuits, Clark manages to save Lana. At the Luthor mansion, Lex helps Lionel out and gets him to the hospital. Jonathan chases after Nixon but ends up saving him from a falling house, and they were both trapped underneath. Clark returns to the farm and finds Martha within the storm cellar. Clark wonders where the ship disappeared to, but he goes off and finds Jonathan, hoping that he didn't kill Nixon. Meanwhile, Chloe finds Lana at the hospital to see if she was okay. Lana tells Chloe that Clark brought her in, but she didn't remember what happened before. Then she had the feeling that it was impossible how she survived. Lex offers his help to Clark to find Jonathan in the woods. Meanwhile, Jonathan and Nixon argue about Clark's secret. Nixon gets a call from Lex, but Jonathan destroys the phone, stating that he'd rather rot than have Lex and Nixon exploit Clark's secret. Clark catches Lex talking to Nixon and starts to feel that everything that Jonathan was saying about Lex is true, and he storms off. 12 hours later, Clark gets worried that he may not find Jonathan, but Lana reassures that he will. She asked Clark how he found her, but he lied and told her he saw her on the side of the road. Jonathan comes up with a plan to get him and Nixon out, but he makes Nixon give him the tape with Clark using his abilities. Later, Lex apologizes and lies to Clark on how he knew Nixon and offers to help by having a map with the only cell phone tower that wasn't destroyed by the storm. Clark takes Chloe and Pete to that area, and they actually find them, but Clark couldn't see through the lead, so he can only see so much. Clark and Chloe finally talk about what happened during the dance, and he wants to make it up to Chloe, but she says the storm puts everything in perspective and wants to stay friends, which Clark agrees with. Chloe, on the other hand, in my opinion, wanted Clark to chase her, but she used pulling the friends card as a defense mechanism. But she was really hoping that Clark was going to fight for what they could have, but she knows that she isn't Lana. Poor Chloe. Later, Clark finds an old crypt where the mobile home that they found earlier was covering it. Clark heads out and tosses the mobile home out the way. As he saves Jonathan and Nixon, the meteor rock started to make Clark sick. Nixon used it as an opportunity to kidnap Clark and expose his secret. Jonathan fights Nixon, but is almost killed due to his injuries that he sustained earlier, but he was saved by Lex. As Nixon dies, Lex looks disappointed that he will never find out what Nixon knew about Clark. Jonathan feels that one or two is lying, but for now, he thanks Lex for saving his life, shaking his hand. Lex manages to save Lionel with the doctors performing surgery, but it wasn't in time to stop Lionel from being blind. At the end of the episode, this starts Lana on being suspicious of Clark. Chloe crying while deleting photos, and Clark's ship is found in the cornfield. This episode was called Vortex, picking up exactly where the last season left off. It sets up some character stuff with Jonathan on how far he would go to protect his family, Lana mistrustful of Clark while developing feelings for him, Lex diving deeper on trying to find out Clark's secret while dealing with his blind father, and Chloe working out her feelings for Clark. Also, John Glover, who plays Lana Luthor, is bumped up to a series regular. 3 months later, Clark starts his sophomore year of high school, and it's the worst heat wave in Smallville in the past 25 years. Lana is making a video for Whitney to show that everyone is thinking of him. Chloe returns from a summer from Metropolis and again tries to get a rise out of Clark, saying that she hooked up with some guy, but turns out she still has feelings for him. But I'll dig into Chloe later when I get into her character. As Clark goes to his class, they are introduced to their new sex ed teacher, Desiree Atkins. As the sexual educational film was playing, Clark couldn't help but look at how Desiree was dressed inappropriately, to horny minors that is. Clark started to feel hot and his eyes started to burn. He unlocks a new ability, a well-known Superman ability that is, heat vision. However, he can't control it and accidentally starts a fire. As Clark helped put the fire out, Lex shows up and is revealed that he is engaged to be married to Desiree the same week they were engaged. Lex also asks Clark to be his best man, and Clark accepts. Clark tells Jonathan and Martha what happened, and he feels that he may have started the fire. Martha deduces that it may be due to his hormones. At the mansion, Lex wants Desiree to sign a prenup or Lana could disinherit him. But Desiree gives Lex a kiss with the power to manipulate pheromones to control him. Later at Lex's wedding, Chloe again baits Clark to give their relationship another try, but more on that later. That night at the Talon, Clark reveals to Lana on the promise he made to Whitney. Okay, I'll get on to this in a little while. As Clark was talking to Lana, he starts to get hot again, and this time he sets the fire to the Talon. The next day, Clark doesn't want to go to school because he has the fear of starting another fire. Jonathan helps Clark to focus his heat vision by using his horniness as a trigger. Later that night, Desiree visits Clark and tries to use her ability on him, but with Clark being immune to meteor-infected abilities, it doesn't work, and she apologizes. Clark tries to inform Lex of what happened and reveals her real name as Allison Saunders, but Lex is already under her control and believes Desiree over Clark, renouncing their friendship. Later, Lex serves Lana with an eviction notice and closes the Talon. Clark finds out and he vows to find a way to stop Desiree. However, Desiree uses the police and gets Clark arrested. Chloe and Lana visit Clark and tell him of Desiree's origins. Her and her boyfriend at the time were doing some NC-17 stuff, and when the meteor showers hit, a few weeks later, she convinced her boyfriend to kill her parents, and she inherited everything. After washing, rinse, and repeat for a few years, here we are with Desiree's plan to get rid of Lex and get his fortune. She couldn't get Clark, so she goes after Jonathan. Clark breaks out of jail and heads to the Luthor mansion and stops Jonathan for killing Lex, ultimately stopping Desiree. The charges were dropped and Clark was left off with a stern warning. Lana finally gets around to sending Whitney her video message, to which she came to the decision on the fate of her and Whitney's relationship. Dr. Hamilton comes to the mansion because he developed the same disease as Earl Jenkins from last season and appears to be worse. Lex sees that Cadmus is not profitable and fires Dr. Hamilton. However, Dr. Hamilton will continue his research without Lex. As Hamilton was driving, he caused an accident, running a driver off the road. Pete was driving by and rescued the man. Pete then finds Clark's ship. The next day, Pete enlists Clark to help with the ship. Clark tries to convince Pete to take it to his farm, but Pete suggests otherwise, and Clark agrees to throw off suspicion to his secret. Meanwhile, Lionel comes to visit Lex, even though he would rather not deal with Lionel and have him at the beach house. But hey, that's any adult child's attitude towards their parents. Hamilton visits the guy that ran off the road, inquiring about the spaceship just before killing him. Later that night, Jonathan and Clark tried to retrieve the ship, but it was already taken. As they both leave, Pete was watching them. The next day, Pete confronts Clark about the ship, which I wonder why he waited until the following day to confront him. Hell, what was stopping you from confronting Jonathan and Clark right there? They were on your property. But I'm going to choke it up as to draw out the drama of what's about to happen next. But anyway, as Pete leaves, Clark makes the tough decision to finally tell Pete the truth. Clark explains to Pete why he couldn't tell him, but it doesn't go well and Pete leaves. Hamilton was the one that took the ship. I don't know how he managed to steal the ship on his own, and it was never revealed how he got it out without making the slightest bit of noise. I just thought it was a small plot hole. That's all. Hamilton tries to get the octagonal disc from Lex, but it was lost during the storm. Hamilton takes it well.
Liar! It's the key! I know you have it!
Hamilton storms off and enlists Lionel to help him with the funding for his research. Lana meets with Clark on the loft, and she starts to show her trust issues with Clark. Hamilton goes to Pete's shed and abducts him. Clark tells his parents that he told Pete everything. Hamilton interrogates Pete and tries to get him to reveal whose spaceship it is, but Pete stands firm. Clark figures out what Hamilton might be and rescues Pete, but is infected by the meteor rocks. Clark pushes Hamilton back and is infected by the meteor rock liquid and kills Hamilton. Lionel decides to stay in Smallville due to his interest of the spaceship. The Kents welcome Pete into the family and what it means to hold the responsibility of knowing Clark's secret. So now here we are with the advancement of the story, introducing a new kind of meteor rock. It is based on the comic book's origin of red kryptonite, which first appeared in Adventures Comics 255. Red kryptonite was once green kryptonite that passed through a mysterious red hue on its way to Earth. The red kryptonite had unpredictable effects on Kryptonians. There is a bizarre list of what it can do to Kryptonians. I'm just going to put the list here so you can pause to read. This version in Smallville is introduced when Clark buys a high school ring against Jonathan's wishes and he puts it on. This makes changes within his personality. A new student, Jesse, is attracted to Clark, much to Lana's discomfort. Clark's behavior started to change more as he wanted to ditch his studies and go out. He even uses his X-ray vision to spy on Lana and Chloe. If you're an adult or if you watch the doggone show, he just uses X-ray vision to see them naked. That's it. Anyway, the next day, Clark uses his parents' credit cards to buy a whole bunch of stuff. He says that it has past time for him to have all the things that other kids have. Jonathan doesn't give a shit and wants Clark to take it all back. Clark runs off and steals Jonathan's motorcycle. Clark gets to school and pushes up on Lana. Jonathan tries to confront Clark on why he's acting the way he's acting, and he shoves Jonathan into a truck. Clark asks Lana on a date after he kisses her. The real reason why Jesse's in town is revealed that her and her father are on the run from some bad people. Her father has certain floppy disks that hold sensitive information. Yes, we are still dealing with floppy disk. If you see my last video, you know. The sensitive information, by the way, is worth millions and some came looking for them. Chloe figures out that their class rings were not made from diamond, but from red meteor rock. Pete shows it to Jonathan and Martha, and they theorize that the red meteor rock messes with Clark's emotions. During their date, Clark passes Lana over for Jesse, prompting Lana to leave. Some groomers from earlier tried to fight Clark, but we all know how that went. Jonathan and Martha plead with Clark to take off the ring, but to no avail. Clark heads to talk to Lex as he wants to leave Smallville together. As Lex distracts him and goes to the Kents, Clark is then visited by a guy looking for Jesse. Clark gets intrigued on how much money the discs are worth and pays Jesse a visit wanting the disc. Clark chases her to the cornfield and is confronted by Pete and Jonathan. Pete uses the green meteor rock to weaken Clark, as Jonathan uses a sledgehammer to destroy the ring, freeing Clark from its effects. Clark attempts to find Jessie and apologize, but herself and her father were long gone. Clark apologizes to his parents for what he said and did, but Jonathan says that Joe's feelings had to come from somewhere due to the fact that it could have been bottled down all this time. Clark reassured that he knows what's important in his life. Clark tried to apologize to Lana, but it wasn't enough for her this time. You know, I've been at odds with this for years. Whenever Clark is affected by the red meteors, he could have lied and had a logical explanation on that he was infected by the meteors like anyone else has, and the effects was temporary. But he chose the high road and to throw off suspicion of his secret with no explanation. Just, I wasn't myself.
Why?
I'm sorry?
That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life.
You shouldn't talk. It makes you sound stupid.
What? What the f?
He actually thinks that would have sufficed in this world of the unexplained. Well, in that world of the unexplained. This episode was hard to watch, even now, and I had to watch it at least 3 times, especially if he wants to pursue his feelings for Lana. Hell, every time he's been affected by the red meteors, it's hard to watch, because you really can't believe Clark will act this way, and when he gets better, he has to face the consequences of those actions. The next 2 episodes, Nocturne and Redux, are completely filler. Nocturne is about a secret poet, Byron, leaving Lana poetry much to Clark's suspicion. Byron can't be in the sunlight due to an experimental procedure that puts his adrenal gland into overdrive, giving him superhuman strength. Redux is about homecoming week, and a girl named Chrissy Turner has the power to suck the youth out of anyone she kisses. She is also the first person besides Justin from last season to have their powers obtained other than for the meteor shower, even though in later seasons they kind of retconned it when Clark was said about certain individuals who gained their abilities even though they went from Smallville. But we will talk about that much later. We continue with the story with a woman by the name of Rachel Dunleavy, claiming to be Clark's mother. Clark knows that she can't be his mother, and Jonathan tells Clark to stay away from her. Jonathan and Martha meet with Rachel, and she gives the backstory of her son, Lucas, that she gave up for adoption to the Metropolis United Charities. Jonathan tells Rachel to stay away from his family in a nice but firm way. Rachel goes to visit Lex and reveals that she had an affair with Lionel and that Clark is his half-brother. Clark finds out that Chloe was looking into his adoption and prompted Rachel to confront Clark. They both get into a heated argument, and Clark reveals certain details about Chloe's mother. Chloe, while crying, tells Clark that Metropolis United Charities was founded by Lionel. Clark confronts his parents, and Jonathan reveals only part of the story, but in my opinion, showing unused footage from the pilot episode. I tried to find proof for that's what it was, but it bare no fruit. I support this theory or assumption due to Lionel and his haircut. There could have been a number of ways they could have done this, like cut his hair for the flashbacks and had him wear extinctions for the rest of the season. It's just hearsay on my part. But anyway, the day when the kids found Clark, they find Lionel in shock as Lex was hit by the meteor shower. They rushed the two to the hospital in time. The rest of the story was cut off when the sheriff arrived and Rachel ordered a DNA test from Clark. He gets swabbed and the kids worry that the world will learn Clark's secret. Clark enlists Pete to switch his DNA test with Pete. Rachel confronts Lionel that he was the one that probably sabotaged the fraternity test. Lionel tries to manipulate her into going back to the mental hospital to get treatment, but she refuses. Rachel had finally cracked and kidnapped Lex. She threatened to kill Lex unless Lionel reveals that Clark is his son. However, Lionel stands firm and will not give in to Rachel's demands. Clark reconciles with Chloe and she helps Clark on where to find Lex. Rachel was going to kill Lex until Clark comes in and saves him, proving to Rachel that he's not her son. Later, Clark gets the rest of the story on Clark's adoption. Jonathan gets a favor from Lionel to make Clark's adoption official, but Lionel wanted something in return. He wanted Jonathan to convince the Ross brothers to sell their cream corn factory to Lionel, which made Lionel get a hold of the community. Man, this is just the tip of the iceberg for Jonathan's hatred for Lionel. Trust me, Lex is not too happy that Lionel was going to let him die. It is revealed that Rachel did have a child by Lionel, but it died during infancy. It was all a lie. When Lionel takes out a locket with a picture of a smiley young boy. The subplot of this episode is Lana confronts her biological father, Henry Small, a lawyer. At first, he wanted nothing to do with her, but at the end of the episode, he came around. Ryan is mostly filler with the return of Ryan and his abilities were killing him, and Clark does everything he can to save Ryan, but it was too late. This was the saddest episode of the season, and it shows that Clark can't save everyone, but he promises Ryan that he will never give up. Before he died, Ryan reads Martha's mind, and she has a secret that she wants to tell, but she wants to wait for the right time. Oh yeah, Lana moves in with Chloe since Nell moved to Metropolis with her fiance. No big deal. Decodic is about a overachiever, Ian Randall, with the power of replication to where he can make a perfect biological copy of himself. He can also reabsorb the copy and attain all the memories and experiences. He was two-timing Chloe and Lana and used their connections to get a scholarship. When he was outed, he tried to kill them both. This further proves that the negative effects of the meteor rocks not only affect people physically, but psychologically. We continue with the story in the episode Skinwalker. A man was killed by a wolf, and it also caused an explosion on a Luther Court site. While Clark and Pete were dirt bike riding, Clark gets thrown off and he crashes into a cave. He then meets a girl named Kyla and stumbles upon the ancient paintings of a legend named Amon. Clark figures that he's the legend and is tied to his origins and wants to know more, much to Jonathan's suspicion. Clark invites Kyla and her grandfather Joseph over for dinner. So we're in that phase where you invite whoever you want without talking to your parents first. Exactly how do you know if your parents had enough food to support you and your new friends? If that were me, after dinner, you would have got your ass whooped. Anyway, Joseph goes over the legend of Amon, a visitor from the stars. The next time Kyla and Clark were in the caves, Kyla falls and Clark catches her, and a boulder falls on Clark, but it breaks. Kyla discovers upon Clark's secret, and she assumes that he's Amon, and Clark doesn't know who he is, but then she said it doesn't matter, and they both share a kiss. During the peaceful protests, Joseph is arrested for the murder of the security guard that was working through the caves, fighting evidence in his truck. That night, Martha was scared by a wolf. Clark figures out that Kyla and Joseph's ancestors used to be skinwalkers, and he questions Kyla that Joseph could be a skinwalker, and Kyla doesn't believe him, and she storms off. Later that night, Lionel is then attacked by a wolf, but then is saved by Clark chasing after it. Clark assumes that it's Joseph, but come to find out it was Kyla. She sustains fatal injuries from the mansion and dies in Clark's arms. As Clark mourns over Kyla, Lana comes in with disturbing news that Whitney is missing in action. Visage, even though it's mostly filler, we see Whitney's return. Or does he return? Clark takes it how you think he would, but Jonathan tells him to put his personal feelings aside due to Whitney serving his country. During his welcome home party, Whitney finds out about Clark and Lana's date and goes on a jealous rampage and warns Clark to stay away from Lana. For the drama of this episode, Clark waits until the next day to tell Lana, which Whitney had time to turn her all around on Clark, causing a rift between himself and Lana. As a Marine Corps lieutenant comes to tell the news about Whitney, he is then killed. Whitney tries to move in with Lana, but she quickly declines. Whitney interrogates his mother to help him with his declined memory. Clark comes over and tries to get Whitney's help, but Whitney doesn't want to hear it and he shoves Clark. Clark, being suspicious, uses X-ray vision and to see that it's not Whitney, but it was Tina Greer. Later, Clark tells Lana about Tina and had her stay with Pete, but it turns out it wasn't Lana. It was Tina morphed into Lana and knocks out Pete. Clark finds and rescues Whitney's mother. Later, Tina morphed as Whitney tries to get Lana to marry her, but Lana quickly says no. Tina asks Lana for her necklace and she gives it to her. Tina then morphs into Jonathan and jumps Clark with Lana's necklace. Tina reveals her plan to be with Lana as she morphs into Clark, leaving him to die in the storm cellar. As Clark weakens, the ship nullifies the necklace. As he goes to save Lana from Tina, Clark manages to prove that he's the real deal. With her plan foiled, Tina knocks out Lana and begins to fight Clark. Clark wins by accidentally killing Tina. As she dies, she tells Clark to take care of Lana. Whitney's fate is revealed that he was killed in action. Lana feels sad that everyone that she cared about leaves her. She says despite Clark's secrets that he is the one good constant thing in her life. The subplot of this episode consists of Lex dating this woman named Dr. Helen Bryce. She was initially paid off by Lionel $100,000 to leave Lex, but she doesn't want to do that because she really wants to date Lex. This episode, I felt like, wasn't a proper send-off for Whitney in my opinion. Being that he died at the beginning of the episode, it's a damn shame too. Now, what I'm about to say next is completely fan fiction on my part, so this is what I would have done to properly send off Whitney. Basically, I will have Whitney survive the attack. He will come back, and while on his way back, he is captured by Tina. Then, in an undisclosed location, Tina tortures Whitney to make him tell all the memories that he has of Lana. Him being jumped by Tina and have him weakened by the meteor rock necklace was pretty much the same, and the ship nullifies it and he goes off and finds Tina. While doing so, Lana is kidnapped and she's actually taken to the disclosed location where Whitney is being held. Tina morphs into Clark and attempts to kill Whitney until Clark manages to find him and he starts to fight Tina. However, Tina came prepared and she made a knife out of meteor rock and weakens Clark. Tina was about to kill Clark until Whitney breaks free of his restraints and dies in front of Clark, sacrificing himself. As Lana cries out for Whitney, Clark fights Tina again, defeating her. Rather than going back to jail, she then kills herself. As Lana mourns for Whitney, Clark couldn't help but feel responsible on what happened to Whitney, feeling on why the meteors are getting in the way of him saving people, and Whitney paid the price. Jonathan gives Clark a speech saying that Whitney made the ultimate sacrifice, and there will be a time where Clark will have to do the same thing. Now, per my research, the reason why Whitney was written off because in the Smallville magazine, the show said they needed to grow and dive more into the Superman mythology. Well, that isn't vague explanation now, is it? I admit the love triangle between Whitney, Lana, and Clark would have been played out. They could have had Whitney learn Clark's secret along with Pete, which would develop his character more and become one of Clark's best friends in the long run. Hell, maybe even involve this character all the way to the final season. But hey, that's just me.